immigrants who follow the procedures that's lawful to be able to equate that with the millions who are migrating here illegally. What does it mean to be American? It means that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That the people who we elect to run the government ought to at least be the ones who actually run the government. Not the managerial bureaucracy, the three-letter agencies, the shadow government, and the deep state that's actually running the show today. So you want to drain the swamp? Here's how we're going to do it. 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats by the end of my first term. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. Shut down government agencies that should no longer exist. From the FBI to the ATF to the CDC to the U.S. Department of Education. We're going to get in there and shut them down. And that's what it's going to take to revive not just our economy, but revive our constitutional republic. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline, which is broken because it relies on the prior year's budget, which in turn is broken because it relies on the prior year's budget before that. No. Start with 0 as the baseline and ask what's actually necessary from scratch. I've been a CEO. That's how I've run my businesses. That's how many CEOs run their businesses. That's how we need to run the federal government. This is how you tackle our national debt. This is how you roll back the unconstitutional federal restraints on our economy so we can drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy again in this country. That's not controversial, that's common sense. And yes, to get here, we do need elections that we can trust and believe in this country. Single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued voter ID to match the voter file. And yes, English is the sole language on ballot. That's not controversial again, that's common sense. These aren't black ideas or white ideas. These aren't even really Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. They shouldn't be. These are American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country. And I believe, deep in my heart, that those ideals still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. We've lost those in this country. You get the change at the bar before you leave. Look at your coin. What does it say? It's etched into the back of each of them. It says, E pluribus unum, which means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. We've been taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways that we're really the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals. And here's how we're going to get it back. It's going to be by what I said in the very beginning. All of us starting to speak the truth in the open again. Say in public what you will say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. You see, that's what this campaign is about. Speaking the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Speaking the truth, not just even to the Democrats on the other side, but to our own side in this Republican Party when necessary. There's a reason why I'm the only candidate in this race who's able to touch certain issues. The carbon capture pipeline making its way across half this state that's unconstitutionally using eminent domain to violate the private property rights of innocent farmers. Yes, I've said that it's unconstitutional and I put an end to it. That it is based on a climate change agenda that, I'll say it, is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. To tell you that I'll pardon every peaceful J6 protester because it's the right thing to do. I'll go straight down the list. Why am I the only candidate in this race who's able to even say these things? because our politics has become corrupt. Every politician is dancing to the tune of their biggest donor today. Both parties, really. It's how the game is played. In my case, that biggest donor is me. I don't report to them. I report to you, the people of this country. I'm not somebody's pawn on a chessboard. I'm not somebody's circus monkey. I'd rather speak the truth and lose an election than to win by playing some political snakes and ladders. Now, my bet's that's the winning strategy. But that's not my choice. That's your choice. That's why Iowa goes first. Every one of your votes at that Iowa caucus on January 15th, it's like the equivalent of 1 million people showing up. This is how it's done. No TV screens or social media algorithms between us today. This is how it's done, and that's how we get our country back, speaking the truth without apologizing for it. That God is real. That there are two genders. That fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. That reverse racism is racism. That an open border is not a border. That parents determine the education of their children. That the nuclear family isn't a bad word. It's the greatest form of governance known to mankind. That capitalism isn't a bad word. It isn't something we need to apologize for. It is the best system we have to lift us up from poverty. That there are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And that the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we're going to revive to save this great nation. Thank you for coming out today, guys. God bless you and your families, and God bless our United States of America. I want to take a few questions, practice what we preach a little bit. I'm going to sit across the table from Xi Jinping in about 1.5 years. I'll sit across the table from the harder ones from you guys. So give me a few harder ones.
Well, I want to rephrase the question I asked you earlier, or at Shaler, is what can you do to stop like chemtrails and extreme low frequency that's doing climate engineering?
Yeah, well, a lot of this is, climate engineering is kind of the oldest trick in the book. It's really, people have been trying to do rain dances and rituals and sacrifices of virgins for most civilizations throughout human history. Now we're trying to change the weather and we call it climate policy. And I think that part of the issue in this country is that we subscribe to these new religions, these new secular cults that are a substitute for our own purpose and meaning in this country. I mean, when faith, patriotism, hard work, and family disappear, you got to fill that with something. Turn to the climate instead. Climate ideology becomes a new god to fill that vacuum. So I could probably go on all day about this one. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. What I'll say is the climate change agenda has nothing to do with the climate, and everything to do with letting China catch up to the United States. And so on my watch, we're done playing this game of trying to bend the knee to this new cult and declare independence from any regulation that will impede our ability to deliver economic growth and prosperity. That's what it's going to take in this country. This is about China not adopting those same constraints and catching up to the U.S., laughing at us at every step of the way. That'll end on my watch, and I can do that as your chief executive, as your president, without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. Because most of these regulations didn't come from congressional laws. They came from our own administrative state as well. And so any anti-carbon regulation or any regulation that's about impeding our own success in the name of this climate religion is gone on my watch, and that includes but is not limited to the CO2 pipeline making its way across this state that I spoke of earlier. Maybe time for your question, sir. Veteran here.
Not a veteran here.
Oh, thank you.
What's your take on some of these states trying to eliminate the voters on some of these ballots and stuff?
Okay. Well, are you a Vietnam veteran, sir, first of all?
What's that?
Is you a Vietnam veteran? I see your hat. Thank you for your service, both of you. I appreciate you. The country that you fought for, the country that our founding fathers fought for, has one simple issue. We, the people, get to select our leaders. And so I think it is disastrous what they're doing now, taking Donald Trump off the ballot in Colorado. I think it's wrong, it's immoral, it's anti-American. And within minutes of when I learned that, I made an announcement. There's a campaign bus outside as soon as I heard it, between two of these campaign events. You saw that. I would take my name off the ballot in Colorado in the GOP primary if they take Donald Trump off the ballot, because what's the point of going through these motions if we don't have an election that we can believe in? And I call on every other Republican. I asked every other Republican in this race to do the same thing. That's the solution. Because then we nullify actually the impact of their decision if Colorado's delegates don't count. Unfortunately, the other Republicans said, well, we need to collect our delegates in Colorado. So it tells a lot about the state of many of the at least standard candidates in our party. But it does bring me to a deeper issue, and I'm sad to say this, but it's true. And I think it's time we open our eyes to this reality. You guys have an important decision to make in about 20 days. And I think this is critical for you to understand. It's become evident to me. They will not let this man, Donald Trump, get anywhere near the White House again. And I think they're leading us into a trap. They're selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. That's what's happening. And it's up to us to make sure we don't fall for their trap. They used a man-made pandemic and associated election interference, big tech on down, last time around, to do it. This time they will stop at nothing. And I mean nothing. They will stop at nothing this time around with. That's the truth. And we cannot be duped anymore. We've been duped enough times. And so it's happening in plain sight. It almost tortures me to watch it. But our movement, America First, cannot end with Donald Trump. It doesn't belong to one man. It doesn't belong to Trump just as it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you, the people of this country. And it's our responsibility to make sure we open our eyes and don't wishfully fall into the trap. We'll look back a year and a half from now and say it was obvious. Right? You look at what we knew now and say, what were we thinking? That's what's going on right now. So now it's up to us to open our eyes and see it. And I'm the only other America First candidate in this race. I think I'll take our movement to the next level. We love the man because he got this fight started. But now it's our job to finish it. It will take now somebody who has not yet been wounded in that war. Somebody from the next generation with fresh legs to reach and lead the new generation. Unfortunately, they duped him in some ways. They said you can't fire those employees because of civil service protections. Read the law. You can do it if you're bringing mass layoffs to the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. That's what I'm bringing. So it's going to take somebody with those sharp elbows, but who also understands the law and the Constitution. And we will honor his legacy more than anybody else in this race is or will, because it's the right thing to do. But now it's up to us to carry our movement to the next level and not fall into the trap that's been laid for us. So you have my word, I will do everything in my part to stop that election interference. That's what I've been doing at every step. But it's becoming clearer that that's not the end. That's just the beginning of what's about to come in 2024. And it's up to us to make sure we don't get duped by their trick. Sir?
On the world stage,
Yep.
there's a movement to bring in one world order.
Yes, there is.
One world currency, reduce our sovereignty. Who on the world stage do you view as an ally to us in that battle?
Viktor Orban is somebody who understands this in Hungary. He's been standing up to the EU. Giorgia Meloni in Italy stands up to this. But I'm not looking for others. We're the ones who they should be asking. Right? When the shining city on a hill no longer shines, what hope does the rest of the world have? So I'm looking to our own future. I'm looking to 2024. Who's our ally? It's those of us in this room. If we're going to be saved, it's not going to be some political messiah coming from some other country to save us. It's going to be because we saved ourselves. And so one thing I will do as your next president is we will stop using our taxpayer money to fund institutions that are hostile to our own sovereignty. Not the UN, not the WHO. We're done with it. End the central bank digital currency talk in this country. End the Fed Now program. Actually restore sovereignty in the United States of America. The ESG movement that's weaponizing your dollars through the back door to do what they couldn't get done through the front door. That ends on my watch. I've dedicated the last 4 years of my life to this cause. Started a company called Strive that competes directly against BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard with some success too. But those roads lead to the ultimate head of the snake. That's the federal bureaucracy. So I'll take that on. If we drain the swamp here to actually shut down the bureaucracy, the rest of this becomes easier. But the vested interest in staying part of the WHO or the UN or whatever start with in our own deep state right here at home. That's the job of the next president. And I think there's nobody else in this country, let alone in this race, who will get that job done with an understanding of how to do it that I'm bringing to the table. And that's my top job as your next president. If I get that done, that alone will be an accomplishment for a first term in this country. We'll go here and then we'll give you the final word.
So do you have your own Make America Great Again platform? 1 through 100 things. So I can go find it today.
Stand for truth. That's what it is. You can go to our website. We have the America First 2.0, 25 policy problems at Vivek2024.com. But they're right in the pamphlets sitting in front of you. I don't know if we panned them out at this particular event, but we have them in the back there.
So the worst thing is
shut down the deep state, grow this economy, declare economic independence from communist China, stay out of World War III, and revive national pride in this country. That's my vision, and that much I know I can get done as your next president without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. And we've offered the most detail of any candidate on how to do those 5 things. That's my pledge to you.
our problem with elections is the common voter doesn't know the difference between a Democratic platform and a Republican one.
They have no idea.
Other than watching your news. So,
Which itself is biased.
So earlier, the reason I'm asking this question is earlier you were talking about Democrats. They all hang together. They all have the same dirty message. Republicans break off in about 3 or 4 tangents across the nation. We can't do anything together. I mean,
Well,
we're not the same as a Northeast Republican.
Yeah, that's the thing. And here's the thing. I don't even like sorting out as Republicans versus Democrats. Do you stand for the pro-American ideals that unite us? If so, we're on the same team. I don't care what label you use. Black, white, libertarian, Republican, one-time 1990s Democrat. I don't really care. If you believe in our sovereignty, if you believe the people we elect to run the government should be the ones running the government, if you believe in the rule of law, if you believe that your first act of entering this country can't break the law at that southern border or elsewhere, if you believe that you have the right to speak your mind as long as I get to in return, if you believe in meritocracy over group quotas, if you believe in American exceptionalism, that these ideals are exceptional and they form the backbone of the greatest nation known to man, then you know what? We're on the same team. Black, white, red, blue, I could care less. That's how we're going to win this election in a landslide, and that's what we need. This cannot be a 50.1 election. I said, don't fall into their trap. A landslide minus some shenanigans is still going to be a decisive victory. But that's what it's going to take, and I'm bringing the next generation along in a way this party hasn't done. I think in modern history, 40% of our donors are first-time ever donors to the GOP, many of them young. Young people are hungry for purpose and meaning right now, for direction, hungry for a cause. And when we don't give it to them, wokeism or transgenderism or climatism or COVIDism, that's what fills the void. I'm filling it with our own ideals of what conservatism actually means. And I think it's going to take somebody now from the next generation to do it. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. And he invented the swivel chair while he was at it, actually. It's a funny story. there's a reason why these revivals, these revolutions are led by that next generation. And I think we live, to the earlier question about sovereignty, I think we live in a 1776 moment. That's the way we got to see it in order to do what we need to do in 2024.
Last, get the final words.
Thank you, I appreciate it. In your beginning remarks, you mentioned some specific departments. So
Yes.
education, FBI, ATF, and CDC you mentioned specifically. In a perfect world, limiting the federal bureaucracy, giving powers back to the states is all well and good. But let's take the FBI, for instance. Sure. Congressional approval to do that. So what's your plan to action? And then what do you use to replace the services those departments take?
These are the kinds of questions I love. So we have the most detailed plans offered in modern American history for how to shut down this administrative state. And I'll go give you the brief version here. I gave an extensive speech in Washington, D.C. at the America First Policy Institute, which I encourage you to take a look at, since you asked such a specific question. So the FBI, the legal authority, under certain circumstances, the U.S. president already has the authority to shut down agencies in the 1977 Reorganization Act. If it promotes the economy, reduces redundant agencies, or promotes efficiency in government. Those are the three criteria. Let's take the FBI. There's 35,000 employees at the FBI today. 20,000 of them are back office bureaucrats in the J. Edgar Hoover building. That's what they still call it, by the way, of the FBI. They're going home and finding honest work in the private sector. 15,000 of them are cops, investigative agents on the front lines doing good work. We will move them to the U.S. Marshals or to the DEA or to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at the U.S. Treasury, which have been much better at combating child sex trafficking or the fentanyl epidemic or financial crimes, respectively, with more specialization. So that's both the legal justification, redundancy, but it also answers your question about how those services, they'll be better performed today with specialization on my watch than they are in the past under yesterday. Take the Department of Education. Does that mean I'm against education in this country? No, quite the opposite. Take that $80 billion and put it back in the hands of parents across this country to choose where they send their kids to school. That's a better use of the money than rotting away in that federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. And so these are deeply practical plans. When I'm talking about draining the swamp, this is no longer a slogan. I mean, I give my predecessor, Donald Trump, and the Republican Party, at least my predecessor, credit. He rolled over that log over and we saw what crawled out. I am bringing the pesticide. That's what's going to take. I mean, to actually know how to get this done with legal authority and understanding our Constitution, which is what I swear an oath to. And I think we deserve a president who, when we swear an oath to the Constitution, you better darn well have read it, know what it says, and use that as your North Star. And if we do that next year, that's what I'm asking for your help to do on that Iowa caucus on January 15th. If you do your part, I love that. Look at that. Look what you just drew up in the back there. You're a talented man. I appreciate that. If you do your part on January 15th, and tell 10 people in this community who couldn't be here today what we talked about too, and bring them to the Iowa caucus. Every one of your voices counts as the equivalent of 1 million votes that day. If you do your part, I promise you, my family and we will do ours to make sure we don't have to be that nation in decline. To make sure we're not at the end of the ancient Roman Empire as we're taught to believe. Truth is, as a nation right now, I think we're really just a little young, actually. Going through our own version of our adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. When you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. You go through your adolescence, you do some stupid things. You go through that identity crisis. You lose your way, but we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think we still can be a nation in our ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent. Maybe we're not even at base camp. On our way still to that shining city on a hill. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and tell them and mean it that the United States of America is still the nation. Where no matter who you are, or where your parents came from, or what your skin color is, that you'll get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, that is what we will revive to save this great nation. Thank you for coming today, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States. Thank you for the welcome back. Yes.
Real quick, I'm going to add, I've been sitting here all through Christmas shopping. I would study the label on the back in the tiny, I put back stuffed animals, Dr. Seuss books, all made in China. I'm getting so angry about it, and I'm not an angry person, but I refute. Oh, don't ask my son. How do I hate being subject to a communist enemy like that? What do you do to stop that? How do we get our manufacturing back?
So I gave a speech in Central Ohio about this, about 2 hours dedicated to this topic on the how. We had poster boards. Some of these, the other one I told you about, we have giant poster boards and everything, and we go into detail on it. But basically, we can't depend on our enemy for our modern way of life. And part of this is the reason companies have gone there. It comes back to even some of the earlier questions. The climate constraints that apply in this country don't apply to China. So our companies are choosing to do it. We seem to let our companies play by the same set of rules. Onshore, I'll start with a few key areas at least. Pharmaceuticals in this country. The same country that unleashed hell on the world with the COVID pandemic, we cannot trust them with our legal pharmaceutical supply chain. That comes back here. Semiconductors, the electronics, and the phones right there, their modern way of life. Probably the refrigerator that keeps the water cold before you drink it. That depends on Taiwan, which China's looking to invade. Lower the stakes of that by actually making sure we make semiconductors here in the United States. And the biggest one of all, and I know, Christmas shopping is one thing, but our own military equipment depends on China for our own modern way of life. Come on, people, what are you thinking? We're accumulating F-35 jets for what purpose if they depend on China to provide them? Think. We can't be subject to an enemy for our modern way of life. We thought we were going to export Big Macs and Happy Meals, and somehow that was going to spread democracy to China. It didn't work. Time to cut our losses. Realize they've actually used their money to get us to be more like them rather than the other way around. And produce what we actually need in the United States of America, combined with, because I'm not a magician. If I was a magician, I would do that instantly. But as your next president, I can do a combination of that. Plus, the reality is you have to use Japan and South Korea and India and Brazil and Chile to fill in the gaps. Then we can get it done. And that's where the Republican Party says it's all onshoring is pro-trade. No, you're missing the point. It's decoupled from China. And if we need to do that, it's all of the above, actually. And again, that's where it's going to take, I think, a leader coming from the outside and from the next generation to deliver what we actually need rather than just using the false dichotomies of yesterday. That is the Declaration of Independence that my man Thomas Jefferson would have signed if he were alive today, but he's not. And that is the Declaration of Independence that I will pledge to sign as your next president. It's a 1776 moment, guys. It's a special time to be alive. That's the positive way to look at this, as it would have been in 1776. So if you guys do your part, as Thomas Jefferson's compatriots did in 1776, then I will promise you, my wife and I both, we will do ours to make sure, not in some cheesy politician way, but in a true way, to make sure that our best days will actually still be ahead of us. Thank you. I appreciate you welcoming me back. Final question. Thank you.